Hi, I'm Teddy Dallin from New Haven Publishing, and this is our podcast bringing you interviews, updates, and chats with our authors and illustrators right across all four of our imprints. We're heavily anchored in the music and entertainment industry for our main imprint, which is New Haven. And today I'm going to be talking to Leon Matthews, who has two biographies out with us. The first one came out in 2016, and it is the one that we're going to be talking about today. And then he'll come back later and we'll talk about the second one. Now, the first one, it brings us from his time as a musician in New York City in the 70s, goes over several continents, talks about a lot of very, very famous people who he was associated with, and brings us up to the time in the late 70s when he was living at the Chelsea Hotel in New York City and was a friend of Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen. So much so that when Nancy passed away, she was stabbed in their hotel room. Neon Leon was one of the first people that the police brought in for questioning and fingerprinting. So I'll let him tell you more about that himself during the interview. I'm wearing this today, which is a symbol that Sid Vicious used to wear. As you know, I knew him back in the day, briefly, about 10 minutes. This isn't Sid's, although I did actually touch it and feel it's heavy. This is Louis Vuitton, just saying. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you to my good friend, Neon Leon. Oh, there's my book. Hi, Leon. Looking, yeah, wonderful.
Hello.
Oh, let me just say that book has been in print since 2016. It is now only available as an ebook, text only, but we are talking about bringing it out as a second edition if there's any interest. So please subscribe, leave us a comment. If you want it as a paperback, then let us know and we'll look into putting it out again. So, I'd like to start the interview with you, Leon. Tell us about you were playing, you have an extensive musical career, and then you went to New York to play the clubs, but then somehow you moved to the UK. Can you tell us about how that happened?
Yeah, okay. I'll try to keep it brief, but it's like I was playing the clubs in New York, Max's and Mother's, and there were these really fabulous looking European women who would come and sit in the front to hear me play and, and send me champagne and stuff. And so I got to know them, talking with them, and I had a band, and they liked the band, and they said, "What would you like?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to take my band and myself to England, and meet the Rolling Stones." And they laughed and said, "Okay, we can maybe help you." And I thought it was crazy. And then they actually said one day, that after one of the gigs, "Here, come to this address tomorrow, and we have a surprise for you." So I went to the lawyer's office in Wall Street, and they had a party for me, and says, "Okay, you can go to England and stuff like this," and gave me a bunch of money. And the band went nuts, too much too soon, and they
Yeah.
went out and wanted to buy clothes and drugs and stuff and be rock stars. And I'm like, no, no, no. We have to invest this into the thing. So I got so angry, I quit the band.
Yeah. Oh, you froze. Sorry, listeners. We're having a bit of a
It's
technical.
okay.
Yeah. Yep, we're all good again. We're just going to let that go. Okay, so you quit the band
Yeah.
and then you went.
Yeah, I left and said, okay, I'm gonna go. And
So
at that
then,
point, yeah,
sorry. So then you arrived in the UK,
yeah.
I'm sure you weren't just standing on the corner wondering what to do.
No, they, they, they came out of Heathrow, and there was a guy standing there with a sign saying, Neon Leon,
Yeah.
and he, come with me, sir. And I said, okay. I guess it's me. I'm the only Neon Leon here. And there was a Daimler who opened the door. Rose Taylor was there, who was Mick Taylor's wife, but I didn't know this at the time.
Yeah.
And she said, "Welcome to England." And I said, "Yeah, well, this is a hell of a welcome." I said, "This is going to be good." I said, this is definitely something I'd wished for. And sometimes your wishes come true.
Yeah, you
And there I
manifested
was
it.
in England. And they dropped me
So,
off at an Italian restaurant on
so
King's
that
Road.
so the King's Road, let's be specific because there's two King's Roads in London. This is the King's Road Chelsea. So this is really
Yeah, the
like the
Chelsea one,
posh,
the
yeah,
fantastic one. Yeah.
the posh one. And you were told to go in there and you met a lady called Charlotte, whom I believe Lemmy Motorhead made a song about called Charlotte the Harlot.
Yes.
So tell me about that. What was that like when you got in there?
Well, I'd met Charlotte in New York and had stayed at her loft and the whole band. And, she was a wonderful person. I wasn't
Yeah.
involved with her in any way, except that we were really good friends and confiding in each other and stuff like this. And
Yeah.
she liked guys that were really, really wild.
All
And
right.
so I was like, yeah, okay. I was like the sane one.
Yeah.
And she came in, and at first I didn't recognize her because I hadn't seen her in months, and her hair was a little different. And I poured her a drink, and then she was like, "Hey, come." And I was like, "Oh, wow." It was her again, like, okay. And she says, "Oh, come upstairs. I have a flat there." And actually, she had the whole house
Oh
and
wow.
the
Yeah.
restaurant,
Yeah. She
and
was a
she was
Swiss
very
heiress.
wealthy. Hmm?
She was a Swiss heiress, I believe it said in your
Yeah,
book.
yeah. She was a
Yeah.
countess
Yeah.
from
Wow.
Zurich,
Yeah.
and all of her friends and all this kind of stuff. So I met all these really wealthy, crazy rock and roll Europeans
So
who were friends of the Stones and everybody.
yeah, and in your book, you also mentioned another old friend of mine, which was Gary Holton. And Gary actually told me, I used to know him 81 to 85.
Yeah, yeah.
He actually told me that when he was in Charlotte's flat, that was the sort of the place. Now I'm going to say allegedly because it's just what he told me. I don't know it to be true. That was where all the famous people came to pick up their drugs. Is that the impression that you got?
Well, there were lots of people who came there.
Yeah,
I saw people doing drugs, and
yeah,
I did some too. For me, I thought the Charlotte thing was fine. I hadn't really done
yeah,
that. A lot of people would come by. I'm
yeah.
not sure if they were dealing or not. Could be.
No,
I
I
mean,
don't.
that's where I met Gary.
Yeah,
I met Gary there.
yeah.
With some of his friends and stuff like this. My first night, Gary was there,
Wow.
and we sat around and did crazy stuff and went out and partied, and
Yeah.
everybody knew them and
Um,
Charlotte's friends.
Tell me about what it was like. I know there's a part in the book which I thought was quite funny where you wake up and suddenly there's this very famous person standing in front of you in the flat, and you
Yeah.
sort of like are going to say hello to him. Tell us about that.
Well, okay. It was the night before, and it was early in the morning. We'd been out since I don't know till like 3, because Speakeasy was like really got good after 12.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
after watching Jeff Beck and meeting him and Bob Tench and Keith Moon and stuff, I was like,
It
I
was
need
like a dream
sleep.
come true, right? It
It's
must have
like,
felt
wow,
surreal.
it's me. I'm here. And
Wow.
I hear some talking, loud talking and stuff,
Yeah.
and I get up and I open the door, and Ronnie Wood is standing there and say, "Hey, welcome to London." And I'm like, he knows me? What?
Wow.
What is this? And he puts out his hand so I can shake it. And then when I grab his hand, he sticks out one finger and goes like he farts. And I'm like, what? What is this? And then I said, well,
Oh,
what's going
so
on? And he
funny.
says, oh, that's Mick and Rose. And I said, yeah, Mick and Rose, who? And then this guy comes, tall guy, and it was Mick Taylor. And he's like, I said, oh, he says, hey, welcome to England. Welcome to London, Leon. I'm like, oh, and he said, I bought you an amp. and have a great time. You're invited to the house, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, and he says, okay, I got to go to Robert Stigwood's office with Ronnie, and I think they were making the exchange, between.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because he left. Oh, we've frozen again. I'm sorry, folks. This is going to happen now and then.
Rose
It's,
likes to, shop and go to the theater and stuff. And I
yeah,
said, yeah, okay. And he says, okay, I'll see you soon at the house. And I'm like, okay. And then I went in, and Charlotte and Rose were having tea and crumpets, and said, sit down, and handed me a hash joint or something. And I'm like,
yeah,
what is this? I felt like I was in the film Performance.
yeah.
That it was that kind of thing, except Luxus house, a luxury
Um,
house.
so then you actually did go to Rose Taylor and Mick Taylor's house, and you stayed there for about a year, as far as I can see in the book, in the first. Sorry
Yeah,
about, I've got a
and
dog.
then
And then
and then I
were
left
you,
again and came back.
yeah, but were you romantically involved with Rose because they weren't together, or were you just there as a house guest and, like company?
Well, I wound up being romantically involved,
Yeah,
with her,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it was actually a great romance. We did lots of wonderful things, like going to castles, and curry runs in the middle of the night, in Brighton
yeah.
Beach, and she was a wonderful person.
Okay.
And the daughter too,
So,
Chloe, who's big now.
yeah. So, um, leaving the UK and going back to New York City,
Oh,
um,
God.
yeah. So, the parts in the book which talk about these ladies, they went there regularly. And did you meet them again in New York after your time in the UK was over?
Oh, yeah, yeah, several times. And
Yeah,
we would hang out, and people couldn't get over it. People were like,
yeah,
"Wow, that's Neon Lynn, and that's Marianne Faithfull, and and that's Anita Pallenberg, and this isn't that Mick Taylor's wife, and that's ex-wife.
So you
She's my
came,
girlfriend now and
yeah.
manager.
You left. I remember reading in the book, it's really quite telling that you left New York a zero and then you came back a hero with
A
all
hero.
these amazing contacts.
Yeah, people were like,
Yeah,
"Oh, wow, he must be good. Otherwise, we kind of missed it,
yeah,
because I wasn't punky enough,
no,
and I wasn't on heroin. I mean, the journalists were on heroin. It was nuts. I was like, you're gonna kill yourself. I mean, my uncle died from this. I mean, it's like I saw no need to do it because I know where it results in.
but
But people
you,
were like, hey, try some of this, man.
yeah.
And I
So,
said, hey, have a sandwich.
so then, uh, so you were hanging out with these people and they were doing drugs. Did you have any scary experiences with this in your time?
Oh, yes, yes. One night we were all out,
Yeah,
and we went to the Mud Club, which was a famous place then. And
yeah,
after the Mud, uh, they wanted drugs, and
yeah,
I was happy with some pot,
yeah.
and some cognac. And
Mm.
so we went to the nursery, because there was quite a few Hells Angels that would be there, and the Clash, and
Yeah,
anybody and everybody, you
yeah,
know. And Rose did some drugs, and Anita came and says, "Oh, you got to go out to the car and help because Rose is ODing."
oh
I'm like,
wow,
"What?" And they says, "Yeah, yeah, and you got to contact Mick and da 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 da." Da. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, "Wow!" And get her to the hospital and call Dr. Steve, which was the Stones' private doctor,
yeah,
who had all these pharmaceutical drugs because he was a doctor. His real
okay,
name, I'm sure, was not Dr. Steve.
yeah,
I don't think that's on his birth certificate, but
no,
it was all kind of legal.
okay,
And I got her to the hospital. I got a hold of Mick. He said, hey, it's going to be okay. Thank you very much, Leon, and this and that. Anita was hiding because she was under a thing where a 70-year-old guy that she used to smoke pot with and maybe have an affair, I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, they were playing Russian roulette, from what I hear, on her bed.
With a gun, real
Yeah,
Russian roulette. Oh my
and,
God.
and yeah, yeah, but Anita was like that.
Mm.
She was fearless. One of the scariest people I ever met in my life.
Sorry, I have a dog. I have a dog.
Yeah,
It's ruining everything.
my
Okay,
cat
but
just
keep
ran
going.
out.
I wish my bloody dog would run out. Okay, well, it's
Yeah.
just
And Anita, uh, the guy was shot. He was 17 and he died.
no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He
Okay.
died. So the police were watching her and all this kind of stuff. And it's Anita Pallenberg and Keith Richards have been busted in Toronto for heroin
Yeah.
and this and that. And
Yeah.
here I am in the middle of this, and they saying, okay, you got to protect Anita, and get them away. And
Oops. We keep freezing. So I'll just talk through whilst everything turns up again. Are you there?
yeah, yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah,
like
because it keeps freezing. But this is our first podcast, so then we're going to do it.
yeah,
Like what's
yeah,
and all. Okay, so that sounds really, really exciting. But one of the things that why you and I became friends, what is over a decade ago, is that we both knew Sid Vicious.
yeah.
So yeah, so we talked about that.
Poor gentleman.
You have an extensive part in my own book. But I want to talk a little bit about it because it's so interesting. So
Yeah, okay.
when you came back to New York the last time and
Yeah,
you had a room with your girlfriend at the
mhm,
Chelsea Hotel, and
yes,
at the same time, Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen turned up from the UK and also
yeah,
lived there. Tell me, how
yeah.
did you meet them? What did you think of them?
Well, I knew Nancy from before when she was a brunette,
Yeah.
and I knew John from the Chelsea on Kings Road, and Don Letz's Acme shop and Matt McLaren shop and stuff like that. And he was a
When you
drummer.
say John, do you mean John Lydon or do you mean John Simon Christie?
Yeah, I mean John Ritchie. Yeah, and
Richie, sorry,
I
yes.
knew
Oh my
him.
God.
I knew him as John.
Yeah, I did
And he was a
too. I
drummer.
did too.
He was a drummer. You know, you know, with Susie and the Banshees, I think it was.
Yes,
And
they
he was
played.
the drummer. And so
He
now,
couldn't drum.
no, he wasn't good, but
No.
he had effort. And Nancy was a brunette from Philadelphia, living down the street from the Chelsea Hotel.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the lobby, and there's this blonde woman with money all over the floor, and dressed in leopard and leather. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, but this is New York. Your money's all on the ground at the front of the reception." And she turns around and she says, "Neon!" And
Oh
I
my
said,
gosh.
"Nancy," and
She was
Honey and Brooke and
loud.
I were like, "Wow!" And at the same time, we said, "Oh, she was." I mean, she had on the side of her face, she had been injured, and she says, "Oh yeah, Johnny Rotten, bloody rotten. His friend did this to me, and me and Sid's upstairs. You want to come upstairs?" And da da da. And I said, "Yeah, yeah, but pick your money up first and
Yeah.
stuff like this, and we'll be up later." And she says, "Okay, we're in floor something or something." They weren't on the
Yeah.
first floor, and
I
Honey
think it
O'Rourke
was
and I were
Jar.
like,
Can I just jump in there? I think it was Jar
"Yeah,
Wobble. He's not called Jar Wobble, but Sid called him that. And I think he
yeah,
was the one there was an
he did
altercation
that."
just before they left. And I
Uh-huh.
believe, allegedly, he hit her.
Yeah.
I'm
She's
not,
just said it was a friend of
yeah,
Johnny
because
Fucker Rotten.
Jar
Okay.
Wobble used to hang out with John Lydon. John Lydon
Yeah.
was a bit, he tried to attack me as well
Me
at a
too.
party. Did he? And I heard, yeah, well, I know. I don't want another
It's
telephone call from his
CBGBs.
manager, Rambo. So,
And I
so
had a bodyguard, I
did
had this
you?
Hell's Angel bodyguard, and
Yeah.
I said, and he came in and he was like, yeah, and I said, don't start that shit with me, mate. You know, yeah, I said, well, see, this is my bodyguard and stuff like this, and we may be in CBGBs. You're not in London, you're in New York, so
Yeah.
stop. And
So is he there before Sid and Nancy died? Well, before, yeah, both of them, or was that later on
they with
when
Johnny,
Johnny Rotten? Yeah,
let's see, when was that? I was at CBGBs.
I think it's
Yeah, that's after.
1778, 17. Sid died in
Yeah, that should
79,
be
and
around that time.
she died in 78. I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure when she died,
yeah,
but
it was 78.
tell us about how you felt. Did you hang out with Sid and Nancy? What did you make of them?
Well, I was going to, mm,
Yeah,
and we hung out a bit, but every time something would happen, you
like
know,
what?
it was like people would want to. Okay, I went to the methadone clinic. Nancy said, "Can you get Sid to the methadone clinic?" And I said,
Yeah,
"Yeah."
because they
And
were
we
trying
got
to clean up
everybody
their
wanted to beat
act.
us up
Yeah.
because he was Sid Vicious. And you're in New York, you're not so vicious. And people wanted to
Yeah,
fight all the time.
he wasn't like that.
And I was like, this guy, I knew him playing with this little kitten up in
Yeah.
this Chelsea hotel room and stuff. Look, I got a cat.
Mm. Yeah.
What should I feed him? It was that. And then there was the showbiz vicious,
Yeah.
and he started to believe that he was vicious.
Mm.
That's like me believing I'm Neon Leon and I got lights coming out. It's not
Yeah,
happening. I'm Leon
I
Matthews,
get it.
and the rest is the performance. But they were taking it really serious, and I felt so sad for them.
I also experienced a bit of that because I was on the Scandinavian tour, so that was years ahead, and he wasn't on the heroin when I knew.
People
And
wanted to fight.
yeah, no, he was so calm. They were so nice. He was quite childish. I was only 16, he was
Yes,
20. But then they
yes,
would go into what I learned to call Sex Pistols mode, where they would do things to get headlines and they would start
yes,
throwing food around the place and just
yes.
doing crazy stuff. And I was mortified. I was so ashamed. And then he just whispered to me, we've got to do this. It's our image. We've got to be crazy. But I
Malcolm
think
told them
none of them were really
like
vicious,
that.
except with John when he was drunk. So on the night before Nancy was stabbed, I believe
Yeah,
they were visiting you and your girlfriend in your room. Tell us about
yeah.
that.
Well,
Sorry about the
that was
dog,
that was
everybody.
that
Sorry.
that was quite interesting. There was a knock on the door, and I opened it, and it was Sid and Nancy. Can we come in? Of course. And I'm just making some food and stuff like this. And
Yeah,
so, and they were really in a weird state of mind, you know. And
yeah,
they said, "Oh, look, we want to show you this." And it was like, okay. And they had a portfolio, and with photos and clippings and stuff for that short career.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
said, "Look at us. We used to look good, and we were healthy, and this and that. And look at us now. We're broken." And I was like, "No, you're not broken. You can fix it." Yeah, we're so miserable. And that I was
mm.
like, oh, and I felt so bad. So I made some beef burgundy with uh, potatoes and broccoli. I never forget it. I call it the punk last supper.
Oh, yeah. So it was, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And we smoked a joint and had some Mateus Rosé.
Yeah,
And they said, okay, well, do you have any more pot? I says, no. They said, well, if you get some, call us. I said, yeah, okay. I was going to go out to Max's because they really disturbed me that night. They didn't
okay.
do anything,
No,
but the aura
yeah.
was
The vibe was
really, I
off.
don't know, it was
Yeah,
like, not so good. and they
Yeah.
left, and they left happier than when they came.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be a cheerleader in high school, so I know. Hey, let's go. Eat the food,
Yes.
eat your vegetables. Uh, and we had fun, and Sid left his jacket, and Nancy left the portfolio, and says, "Okay, we can get this tomorrow." And
Yeah.
Sid said, "Yeah, you can wear this if you want tonight when
Yeah.
you go out." And I was like, "Okay, wow, cool."
Yeah.
Sid's jacket. I've seen this in the pictures. That'd be
Mm.
funny. But I didn't wear it out that night because it didn't really fit with what I was wearing, and I left that in the room portfolio, and my girlfriend went out to her dancing job in
Yeah.
New Jersey because you didn't have to be topless there.
Yeah. So,
She said, "I'll go."
so during that night, I'm not going to really theoreticize about it, but I think the general consensus is that Sid passed out on the bed. Nancy had ordered some drugs to be delivered, and
Hmm.
she got stabbed. And instead of waking Sid, maybe she couldn't wake him. She went into the bathroom where she passed out and bled out and died.
Yes, yes,
So Sid woke up to this and left the room and was in totally out of it,
yeah.
and she was dead. So tell us what happened then. Did the police come to the Chelsea? Well, of course they did.
They came a bit later after uh, the bellman beat
Yeah.
Sid up in the hallway,
Yeah.
because I guess it was being obnoxious, and he had to get to the methadone thing. And
Oh, Sid had to get to. Oh, of course, yes.
he had to be there, and he had to be there on time. So, in
Otherwise, he'd
my
get
opinion,
sick.
he didn't even know she was dead because his mind was,
Plausible.
I got to go to get the methadone,
Yeah.
so I won't be sick.
Yeah.
And there were strange knocks on my door, which I didn't answer
Mm.
because my friend that was hanging out there, I said, no, it sounds like death,
Yeah.
and there
Yeah.
was blood out in front of my door and things like this. And Sid went to the methadone clinic, came back. I'm not sure what time this guy Henry, I think his name was Henry, beat him up.
Yeah.
And then around 10 or 11, Honey O'Rourke and I was banging on the door, and it's Stanley Bard. And he says, "Open the door, Leon."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, what's the problem now? God." And I opened the door, and it was like all these journalists and TV cameras and stuff in front of my door with the owner of the Chelsea Hotel. And I'm like, this this famous journalist at the time for ABC, she
Hmm.
says, "We're talking to Neon Leon." And I'm like,
And you didn't know what had happened. It's just like crazy. I think we're frozen again.
and I said, "Sid Vicious didn't have an English girlfriend." "No? Who was his girlfriend?" "Oh, well, Nancy Spungen. She's from Philadelphia." A correction on that. The dead woman is not Sid Vicious's English girlfriend, but it's an American from Philadelphia, Nancy Spungen. I'm like, what? You know?
So that's the way
And
you heard it from the
yeah,
journalist. Wow. What a shock.
and then these two detectives came and says, "Could you please step into your room?" And I'm like, and then they led me to the balcony because I was on the first floor, and that was just as she was being carried out in the body bag.
Nancy was being carried out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
And I'm like, and they said, "We'd like to ask you a few questions." And I'm like, I'm trying to suss all this out.
Yeah.
It was just, what? You know, my God. And then they began asking me questions and Honey O'Rourke questions and this and that and that. And I'm like, and I'm a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
I'm freaking out. My friend's dead. What happened to Sid? What's this? What's that? I don't
So
know anything.
did you find out later though, did they take Sid with them to the police station because he was supposed to have been in the room with her? or were they looking at,
I don't
everyone?
really know. I was just
No.
that part was nuts. And they says, "Do you mind coming down to the police station?"
Yeah.
And I
Who
said,
was that? Who
"No,
said that?
the detectives."
Okay. Yeah.
And they said, "Do you mind coming down to the precinct?" And I said, "Yeah, I have to take a shower and stuff." This is okay, fine. This is the address, and that's that. And I said,
Okay.
"Okay." And I'm like, it was horrible.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it
were
was one of
they,
the worst things I've ever been through in my life.
did they talk specifically to you and Honey because they knew they'd been there the day before, or did they just sort of target you as, this guy's probably done
Yeah,
something?
I think they just targeted me.
Yeah.
I
I
was the
think,
black guy, you know, he's a punk, he's a rock and roll thing. He's got a white girlfriend with blonde hair, you
yeah.
know. We don't like this.
Suspicious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Very
Uh,
racist.
yeah, extremely. And
Yeah.
so they said, "Oh, can we have your fingerprints?" And they asked me some questions. And I said, "Yeah, you can ask me anything, you know."
Yeah.
And they asked me stuff. And then uh, there was a guy, was very famous guy whose name I don't remember. He was the district attorney for Manhattan. Mm.
Oh,
And
okay.
he got a hold of me, and he talked to me too, and basically said, "This guy, and basically the police says you're kind of being railroaded,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what? And they said, can you do you have a bodyguard? And I says, no. Can you afford a bodyguard? I said, I don't know. No, why? Well, we can't protect you because all these death threats started coming on
Yeah.
day one, you know,
Yeah.
and people blaming me. And some journalists jumped on that, and it
Yeah.
was like, oh, they said, well, what should I do? They said, you need to leave town.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, you need to leave town. And if you're going to home, you don't say you're going home. You tell them you're going to California. And if
Yeah.
you're going to California, tell them you're going to England. And
Can
then
I
nobody knows
can
where you are.
can I just jump in because I remember also there was an episode with Malcolm who would put you in harm's way after all these death threats.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, Malcolm, so
Malcolm
he comes.
McLaren, to be clear.
Yeah, Malcolm McLaren, he comes to town, who I knew him from before.
Yeah.
And I knew him from before, and the Stones told me when he asked me if I wanted to be in his new group he was making, and
Yeah.
could I play bass,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And I told Rose and Mick this, and they says, "Oh, well, you can do that if you want,
Yeah.
but you can't be with us
Oh,
if you're
so
going to
there was
be
a
with him."
conflict of interest. Didn't they like him?
No,
No.
they couldn't stand him,
No. I've
and
heard that a
I didn't
lot.
like how he treated the New York Dolls
No.
when he was the tour manager.
Yeah.
And he dressed them up in communist red plastic and stuff like this just to get people upset in America. He was
Yeah.
upset. He worked on that. And
Yeah.
Malcolm came to me and says, "Okay, Leon, what I want you to do is like I'm making a group. Jerry Nolan's going to play the drums, and Sid's going to sing, and you play the bass, and maybe it was Steve Dior or somebody."
I think it was Steve Dior, actually. I'll get Steve to confirm. He'll probably leave us a message. He's also an old friend of mine.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it
okay.
was Steve Dior. Yeah.
Yeah, and are you interested? And I says, yeah, maybe, And
Yeah.
he says, and I says, where are the gigs? He says, the first gig's going to be in Nancy's hometown.
Oh, okay.
And I said, are you nuts?
Yeah.
They'll kill us. And he said, yeah, but you'll be famous.
Oh my gosh, that's typical Malcolm.
And then I said, no, I'm not doing it. He says, well, I'm going to make sure you never work in this town again.
That didn't work.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah. Awful. I totally agree. I heard some stories through the
I
Pistols
love
when I knew
Vivian.
them.
She
Yeah.
had real talent.
Yeah.
God rest her soul.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know.
But that brings us towards the end of the book, because I know that you then went to Sweden,
Yeah.
and this story comes to an end, but that's not the end of the story, because
No.
you went on to write book 2, and we're
Yeah.
going to have you back on to talk about book 2, which is, it can't get crazier than book 1, but it very nearly absolutely does, and with all these famous people around you, it's just amazing. I want to thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll share this around, and hopefully people will contact us, and we'll have you back very soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
bye for now.
as Mick Jagger said, it's
Yeah.
only rock and roll, but we like it.
Yes,
Punk
we
rock
do.
music.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Bye, Neil.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.